The here corner. was-
Okay, it's 5 o'clock and as chair of the historic. As chair of the Historic Preservation Board, Arthur Marcus, I call this meeting to order and will stand and pledge allegiance to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we will discuss the minutes from last month rather. Anyone have any comments, questions? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of last month's meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries, the minutes are approved. If anyone is here from the public and wishes to speak, now the city attorney, assistant city attorney will let you in.
Can you please stand and raise your right hand if you're going to speak to the board tonight? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth? and nothing but the truth?
Thank you. And we'll start with the first agenda item, which is case number UDP HP 24008 at 1200 West Las Olas Boulevard. Are you representing the client? Please come to where's our left turn? Oh, right here. It keeps moving.
Do you want to do the disclosures first?
Well, I was gonna do the disclosures for this project. Are there any disclosures? Anybody visit, walk
Yeah.
by,
Drive by.
drive by?
Site visit?
Walk by. Yes, I believe.
None.
None. Okay. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Jason Bucco from A&M Hurricane Protection. We're doing the job for my customer here. We're trying to get approved a horizontal roller for her property versus the single hung. Because the issue she's having is due to the size she has, she doesn't meet the mean of egress for fire if you do a single hung. So therefore, we're trying to do a horizontal roller, but present it with a grid. And I have a sample here. I have pictures too, but easier to show you a sample.
That's a real window,
Yeah, well, it's not quite the size.
huh? I understand, they're larger.
So this horizontal roller,
Right.
single hung just goes up and down, it doesn't slide. So what we usually do is we do a historical, we'll put a grid here. And it
That-
makes it the appearance as if it's a single hung.
So that's an applied muntin?
Yeah, it's a grid they call it.
They call it a grid,
Grid,
okay.
yeah, muntin usually is the ones if you connect two windows together.
Oh, okay,
Is
okay.
the grid. So usually we put the grid on here to give it the appearance as a single home. So I would put one on each side. I can stick them on here for you. But, you know, I can put one on each side. It'll give me the appearance as a single home, but it's a horizontal roller window.
So while we're asking questions, I want to jump in. Can you could replicate the pattern of the historic
Well,
casement windows?
there's the picture you see there on the screen. That has a lot of grooves. That has like, it looks like four little pieces of glass.
No,
All the other properties around don't have that exact pattern. They have just plain without any pattern. I could do that if necessary. I could do that. It just wouldn't look so good on a horizontal roller window,
but it may look better on a historical building.
but I could do that. I could replicate that. Maybe not exactly where you see how it has four going across, but maybe it'd be three, but it would.
Why can't you do four?
Because the squares would be so small.
But
it would look too busy.
Don't you have like applied muntins that you apply to the outside of the glass and the inside to make it look like it's
Yeah,
attached?
that's what this is.
Okay,
But if we try to replicate four exactly, you're gonna have to put four squares, it's not gonna look so good, it'll probably look better with three squares, but we could do either way.
okay, sorry to.
No, we're just trying
Too much
to,
time.
get it to kind of go like that, and to give you a better. I get the tape off there.
So I have a question for Tricia in the meantime, and I'm just filling your time until you're ready. Tricia, we don't, I remember reading that we don't have historical drawings for the house. So do we know what they originally looked like?
We believe that these are the original,
The casement?
yeah,
Yeah,
and if you would like
Simone can do an overview of this case
Please.
from the staff.
Okay,
report.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Jump ahead.
The property is at 1200 West Olis Boulevard. As you see in the photo, it sits on the corner, the southwestern corner of the intersection of West Olis Boulevard and Southwest 12th Avenue. We don't have original drawings. We do have early drawings that indicate that maybe these were original windows, but there's nothing that is there's no original drawings otherwise, so visual inspection, we are on a time period. The building was built in 1948 in the minimal tradition. So the corner windows are a character defining feature of that typology. And so the building does partially meet the criterion under ULDR section 4727-2411 D3CI, where the two center windows that face West Las Olas Boulevard were already altered from the original. They're single hung windows. And they were not original. There were doors there. Otherwise, the other windows seem to be within the time period. And so that's where that meets partially the criterion. There is no intent for the masonry opens to be modified, but the rhythm of the foundations will be maintained. And that the proposed windows are white aluminum with a gray tint. And we recommend always a clear tint, or with a low E option. The 10 windows are proposed to be replaced as part of this application. And the record indicates, like I said, those two in the center facing West Las Olas Boulevard were replaced. And the visual assessment of the steel casement windows leads staff to believe that those were, like I said, original. So bearing that, the following in accordance with a motion to, in accordance to section 47-2411 D3 CI and 47-2411 D3 CII of the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP HP 24008 located at 1200 West Las Olas Boulevard partially meets the criterion as outlined in section 47-2411 D3 CI and sections 47-2411 D3 CII. The following conditions for the COA for major alterations are provided for consideration by the HPB if the application is to be approved. That all glass shall be clear with an option for low E. All muntins must have a raised profile. And this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Since we interrupted you with everything else, would you like to say anything
No,
else?
well, this is the raised, that is what they,
Okay,
by the raised one, it's not a flat one. There's usually two options, a flat or a raised. Usually the raised goes on the outside and the flat usually goes on the inside. But that is the raised, one on here.
this is a little more historical.
Yeah. Yeah, the flat one is a little more modern.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have anyone else who would like from the public who wish to speak? If not, we'll close the public hearing and open it up to the board.
I know this property really well. I walk by it almost every day. I think given the first point that was cited regarding not meeting egress, that certainly would meet a real threshold on why they would pivot to a horizontal slider. I also had I had a similar circumstance a few years ago, and I think all things considered, it's hard to even tell the difference. I can't tell the difference. So I think what they're proposing, I'd be totally in favor of. Yeah, I wish the code would allow for them with these changes, because I almost think aesthetically it's equivalent.
I wanted to follow up real fast and just ask one question.
Sure.
In my experience, the sliders have been less expensive than the up and down or about, which is
Well,
the price point?
they're almost the same, but
Okay,
when you're putting two windows next to each other,
right,
on a single hung, it's cheaper to do one, because I can do one window instead of two separates with a mole bar.
understood.
So it does work out to be a little bit less, but
Okay,
if each window is the same size, it's very minimal difference, but when it's a case where there's two put together, then it's less to go this way.
okay, thank you. Richard,
Just a question, I guess these are raised for the two that were changed. And had you considered the option for crank opening rather than them even being sliding at all, vertical or horizontal?
Well, if you do a casement window, you have, it really wouldn't look good because you have to do. Because the opening is about 52 or 53, so you have to do it in half. They don't make a casement window 53 inches. They only make it 39, so you'd have to do 52 divided by 2, and it's gonna be real busy to have two windows to open for one open.
Okay. Do the
Could
ones,
be, but,
do the ones in the corner open? They don't open at all, or, okay, and you are putting the 8, because that has like 8 panels on those windows rather than 4.
4/4.
Each side, yeah.
Yeah, that one has 4 on each side. I think it would look better if I would do it a little bit less. I mean, I could replicate that, but again, you know, you have this bar, this is the slider, so that really takes some space out of it, but.
It's just keeping it consistent rather than
Right.
trying to change the contributing or historic aspect of it.
Again, I could, it's just the squares are gonna be really, really small. I think it would be a lot better. I could, if I had to do some.
For clarification, windows number 4 and 5 are going to be single hung windows
Yeah.
according to the application.
Those are the ones in the
The
middle, right?
ones in the middle, so the ones on the far right, that in that photograph on the far right, those are gonna be single hung windows.
But they can still be made to look the same with the
And those
squares.
are the ones he's talking about.
Yeah, those single, that's not a problem.
Okay,
That's gonna be.
it's the other
exactly-
ones where you think.
It's the ones on the corners.
So numbers 2 and 3 are the ones
Yeah,
that
there's-
you're talking about. You're talking about 2 different windows is what I'm getting
Yeah,
at,
yeah,
you know?
There's four corners, so each corner is gonna have like number 2 and 3.
I'm just trying to, as much as possible, keep them consistent from what's there. And if you're adding
Yeah.
buttons, applying them, then it's better to make them consistent rather than just, you know, changing them. So you're changing the appearance of something that's contributing.
Okay.
Okay.
With the city's recommendation, can I just ask, the raised muttons, is there a preference in the historical guidelines? That they be small squares or big squares, or do we know?
You would want to replicate what the historic style is. So the first preference is always to
Keep it.
retain the original and preserve it. In this case, we have seen steel windows be renovated with impact glass. So companies will come and take the windows out, install impact glass and retrofit it to become safe. In this case, they're asking to totally replace the windows with a different type of window. So our code actually says no horizontal sliders. In this case, they're proposing that anyway. And then we would want to match the appearance as close as possible. So in this case, if they weren't doing the original steel casements, because they are slender windows, then the next best thing would be 2 casements. And then there, yeah, it goes down from
You
there.
know, the other advantage of casement windows over single hung is as people get older, it's easier to slide a window than to try and pick it up.
Yeah. Usually after a while, when you pick up the windows, there's balancers and springs on each side, and after a while, they don't hold up and they slam shut. That's usually when people get in the window. Yeah.
Shane, did you have anything?
No, that I just
Okay,
wanted to clarify.
I wondered if the owner's here, if the owner has anything to add.
yes, go ahead, look at,
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, my name is Marie.
wait,
Stand
stand right here at the podium
I'm sorry.
and just reintroduce yourself.
Yes, hi, my name is Marie Wijaya. I own the property in 1200 Las Olas. I was just basically trying to replace to make it safe and everything else for hurricane, for whatever. I'll do whatever necessary. That's why I had spoken to him and everything else and what's best
Great.
for the property. And here we are right now trying to get approval for whatever's necessary.
Okay, Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think with that, I agree with Tricia's position and keeping it as close as possible.
Right. Excellent. You have.
I don't have anything else to add.
Tim?
I'm in agreement with Richard's assessment of it looks fine. What he's proposing, I also think one of the important statements is the owner is trying to make it safe. And I think we need to give consideration to that when we're looking at change.
And I agree, as I tried to make clear, that I think it really should maintain the historic look with a number of casements in the same pattern. We realize that new window openings, they become smaller, but it's the historic look. This actually was designed by a very prominent architect in the 1950s. He had a large firm, one of the largest in Fort Lauderdale. I can't remember the whole name of the firm. And they designed a lot of work on the Las Olas Isles. So I think it's a very handsome house, and I think it'll be a great addition to add the windows. Are you repairing the fence too?
I'm trying.
Okay. Because the fence
Yes.
looks great with the windows.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
That's in a work in progress as well.
Of course. Are there any other comments? If not, we'll open it up to a board motion. Anybody want to take a stab at it?
I'll do it. Yeah, motion to approve the resolution to the appropriateness for major alterations in their case number UDP HP 24008 located at 1200 West Los Olas Boulevard based on the findings of fact, and the glass is fine. We didn't really talk about that, but would you be okay with the low E? I'm going back and asking, but
The low E is like an additional, call it a customer.
Yeah.
It's like a greenish. Now, a lot of people don't like it because it gives a green hue.
What
Yeah.
about the clear,
The clear doesn't have any protection from the sun at all.
so I'm
So
okay
if
with
you'd like to have a
that.
little bit of protection from sun. I seen a lot of people in the neighborhood, they've done an aftermarket, where they had a tint company come in and tint the windows after, which is not as good as getting it done from the factory, because when they have the impact glass, you have two pieces of glass with a sheet in between that makes an impact, sort of like a car window shield. So when they tint it at the factory, they tint it before they laminate the two pieces of glass together and stick them, so it can't scratch off or bubble off. So it's really best to have it tinted at the factory versus somebody doing an aftermarket tint, where it can start to maybe turn colors or start to bubble over time.
Okay,
Okay, so I'm gonna continue on with my motion then,
Please.
and I'm just gonna, number one's not gonna be a priority in my motion. All the buttons should have a raised profile and should match the pattern of which is currently there, and it meets the public or building zoning and UDL requirements.
you're saying that the glass should be, what is
The gray is acceptable.
gray is acceptable, okay.
I'm taking out number one.
Okay.
Richard, just clarify the findings of fact, or that the glass is acceptable based on the testimony you've heard.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Congratulations, good luck with everything.
Thank you
Thank you very much.
very much.
I do have one question, if I may. How long will the process take? Because I have it's in permitting, but it got kicked back obviously because of this. Will that automatically be something that you have to call them, or?
That's Tricia.
It's a 30-day waiting period following today's approval.
Okay,
And so after 30 days, staff will be able to go in and approve the permit. We'll also send you a resolution and a certificate of appropriateness.
okay, so on our end, we don't have to resubmit everything, just leave it the way it is and you'll contact us?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the state of the permit is in, so we might have to have it updated
Okay.
to reflect this
No
approval.
problem. Thank you very much. for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing the window.
Yeah.
I know you're carrying it in. I think that's just. No questions there. Yeah. All right, the next project on the agenda is case number UDP HP 24006 311 Southwest 14th Way. Simone, is it yours or Richard?
This is mine.
Do you want to do disclosures first?
Yes, are there any disclosures?
Drive by.
Right, right.
No disclosure.
No disclosure.
No disclosure.
New disclosure, no disclosure. Okay,
So this property is also located in Sailboat Bend. It's located on Southwest 14th Way. They did come in last month for the 3 properties that they're proposing along the street for new construction, and they were deferred until this meeting. So a couple of you weren't here, but we talked about them and the issues that the board had. The applicant had brought some updated information to the board meeting. And so just to give a little bit more time and for an opportunity for clarification, they agreed to come back for the April meeting. This property is located on a parcel that was split into 4 lots approved by the Board of Adjustment. And this is the parcel that's located furthest to the south on the overall property. It's located south of an existing structure on the site. That's a 1-story dignity home that will remain on the site. And this is a 2-story single-family home. The applicant has referred to it as a transitional style architecture. And the front porch is slightly protruded forward from the garage, the 2-car garage. And then it has a fence that's located in the front with a low wall that supports it. So I'll go through a few of the criteria from the code as far as which items and elements the project is meeting or partially meeting or not meeting. But I'll primarily focus on the elements that the project is not meeting. So in the general criteria, we have an effect on the proposed work on the landmark or the property in which the work is to be done. And this particular single family home is pushed forward much greater than the adjacent parcel to the north. So the property to the north is set back about 50 feet from the street frontage. This one is set back about 25 feet. So there's a large difference between the setbacks. So in that case, it's not meeting the criterion.
what is allowable in this location?
Generally, within the historic district, we want to create a consistency along street frontages. So you're trying to maintain a consistent street frontage.
But just a question on that, isn't the backyard water?
Yes,
So like, if you added an extra 25 feet, would you have essentially no yard in the back?
I mean, what they're proposing for the yard is a little bit greater than what the required setback is.
Okay,
But we are pointing it out. We're pointing
Okay.
out the,
Yep.
the situation.
okay.
Just on that issue, could they get a variance for the rear yard? To interface, since they're giving something in the front yard?
Well, the board does have the ability to reduce a rear setback and a front setback, but it would be to be consistent with the properties and within the district or along the street frontage.
We're jumping ahead a little bit, let her finish.
This is somewhat of a unique situation because the parcel to the south, it's vacant. There's 2 parcels to the south that are vacant. A parcel that's further south has a new construction project that's been approved by the Historic Preservation Board. There's 2 other new construction projects proposed further north, and then there's an existing home on the end of the cul-de-sac. So it's a little bit different than what we're used to reviewing, where you have more existing structures and, on neighboring sites. So within the general criteria, the other ones listed are met within the criteria for new construction. The first one is the height of the proposed building. Obviously, there's a height difference between the existing 1-story building and the proposed 2-story building. The height is slightly softened in the front where they have the reduced height, but that's not really adjacent to the existing 1-story building. So in that case, staff found that the application partially met the criteria. And then moving forward under letter E, the relationship of a building to open space between it and adjoining buildings shall be visually compatible to the buildings and places to which it is visually related. Again, this is related to the setback and the differences between the front yard. So the application in that case does not meet the criterion. And then under H, appurtenances of a building such as the walls, wrought iron fences, evergreen landscape masses, and building facades shall, if necessary, form cohesive walls of enclosures along a street to ensure visual compatibility of the building to the buildings and places to which it is visually related. This is related to the fence that is proposed along the front. There really aren't any fences along that street frontage. There's a chain link fence that's currently located there. But in general, it's kept open. The area is very heavily wooded. So it has a much different feel present day. So in that case, staff found that the application partially meets that criterion. And letter I, the size of a building, the mass of a building in relation to open spaces, the windows, door openings, porches, balconies shall be visually compatible. There's only, like I described earlier, about the 1-story existing structure on the site. It does create quite a contrast. And if you look further at the other structures that are along the street, it's a great contrast and it's not visually compatible. So in that case, staff found that it does not meet the criterion. And then J is a similar finding. For the material and design guidelines, they are now proposing brick on this building facade. Brick is not listed in the ULDR, section 4717. And so we can't find that it is compatible within the historic district. For windows and doors, they primarily meet the regulations. The roof also meets the regulations for the pitch. However, they are proposing a composite shaped roofing shingle, which is also not listed in the material and design guidelines. Garden walls and fences. The material and design lines are met with the actual materials that are proposed. However, the fence itself exceeds the height limitation of 3 feet in the front yard. So they're proposing 4 feet. And for the arcades and porches, they are proposing stucco and metal, stucco at the brackets and then metal at the railings. However, they're also describing fiber cement party board as a wraparound for the columns, the fascia, and the trim work. Party board is not an approved material in the material and design guidelines, so it does not meet that criterion. We reviewed this project with zoning, and they are slightly short on the FEMA requirements because the maps were just updated, so they just have to increase their height just a little bit, and they are aware of that, and they need to provide some additional dimensions when they submit for permitting. And they also need to address a few things at the time of permitting, including the design of the fencing along the north and south property lines, the gates at the side property lines. And they also proposed the stucco at the brackets, but it wasn't really specified as far as how the brackets would be constructed. So in accordance with the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction under case number UDP-HP 24006 located at 311 Southwest 14th Way partially meets the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CI of the ULDR, partially meets the criteria as outlined in section 472411 D3CII of the ULDR, and partially meets the criteria as outlined in section 4717. The elements that do not meet or partially meet the criteria of the ULDR include the hardy board, which isn't listed in the material and design guidelines, the composite shaped roofing, which is also not listed, the proposed fencing, the height differential between 3 feet and 4 feet, and the horizontal slider windows and doors are not allowed if visible from the right of way. They do propose them on the rear elevation. And the proposed garage door is also proposed as glass inserts, which is not typical for the historic district's residential properties and gives more of a commercial appearance. The board has to make a motion of approval, denial, or approval with conditions. There are several conditions that are outlined within the staff report on the last page for the board's consideration. One is the fencing located within the front yard building setback along the side property line should match the material and height approved for the front property line. The garage door must be a solid panel, or if glass windows are utilized, they are limited to the top row of paneling. 3, cement fiber hardy board is not approved material, and a substitute that complies with the sailboat bin material and design guidelines must be chosen for use at the fascia, columns, and some of the trims. And 4, this property is located in an archaeologically significant zone, and if unmarked human remains are discovered, they must alert the city. And 5, this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
Thank you. Is there someone to speak on this project? Hello,
Hi.
please introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, I'm Kelsey Thompson. I am representing the applicant and property owner tonight, Kurt Fretham. We met at the last meeting for those of you who were there. I do have a statement from him as he's not able to be with us here tonight.
And may we ask, what is your relationship to the project?
So I work for Kurt as his personal assistant.
Okay.
Relationship. So this letter from Kurt Fretham, it says, "Dear Historic Preservation Board members and staff, the purpose of this letter is to express my apologies for regretfully not being able to attend this meeting tonight. I take the Historic Preservation Board review process seriously and was disappointed to learn that the April 1st meeting conflicted with my family's travel schedule. I made myself available by phone and email should you have any questions that Kelsey is unable to answer. I sincerely appreciate your efforts in this review and hope you find our designs acceptable tonight. Best regards, Kurt."
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Or-
Yeah, so I thought staff did such a great job of presenting and making our plans thorough and clear for you tonight. And I also think that the renderings speak for themselves, but I did put together a presentation that I'm not sure, Will, if I have control to put that on the screen or if that's you. As he's pulling that up, I also just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to come back for clarification and to review. There we go. So my presentation somewhat encompasses all 3 of the properties that we'll be reviewing tonight, but I'll just begin. It's just contextual. So, so first, a few things that were brought up at the March 4th meeting. We just wanted to, give you guys confidence tonight in what you're reviewing and hopefully approving. And so the home to the north, we were asked to consider the site and context and the architecture of the area. And so first, if we're looking at that, within the immediate context of the street and block first, and then the district. So on the right-hand side, you see a map of where our property is. So what we're reviewing right now is the 311. And then to the home to the north along the river. From the front facade, this is just looking at it right from the cul-de-sac bubble. It does appear to look as a 2-story home from the front facade. I know that the homeowner, I think, was here and mentioned that it was a single level, but from the front facade, it does look like a 2-level story home. And then the home to the south. This home, it was a William Bigney home as well. Again, a 2-story home. It's currently no longer there. It was approved for the demolition that I believe this board approved. But when we initiated our design and this application, this structure was there. So if I put these 2 structures side by side, they look quite similar. And this is what we use as our, immediate contextual architecture that's in the area. If I just flash the 2 homes that we're proposing to the north, I know that staff hasn't introduced these yet, but these are Vista homes, which I think, do a good job of, taking what's there and then updating them for, what modern living and modern construction, but still keeping the, intent of the sailboat district, that's currently there.
So I think if you could focus on just 311 though,
Sure,
if you have to consider everything separate.
that makes sense, totally.
Just to clarify, those were 281 and 291.
Yeah. So then also because the river is considered a right of way, and you can see, this is again, just standing at the cul-de-sac bubble. To the property to the north, so I drew an arrow where I'm looking, and you can see the roof of a two-story home then on the other side of the river. So I just want to point that out. I think it's important, just part of this neighborhood. The house all the way down to the south is another two-story home with, I think that might be a garage. I'm not really sure from this picture. That's at the end of 14th Way. The red mark on the right-hand side is where the 301 home is approximately. And if we keep going down the river, I think this might be a part of the PUD that maybe was referenced in the last meeting, but these single-family homes, there are 6 of them. Again, 2 stories and a forward-facing garage. And this is on the 14th Avenue. So again, you can see where the proposed home, new construction home will be in the red compared to where this is. So just giving some context of what's in the area and what we took into consideration and when we're looking at the context and site. And this is that PUD as well. So, that big condominium development just across the road. And then also in the immediate area, this is 301 Southwest 14th Way, which is a property then directly to the north with the existing William Bigney home. We own this property. I think some of you were probably on the board when we were here for a demolition certificate of appropriateness, which was approved by the board because this is a non-contributing structure. However, there was some neighborhood talk that they'd like to see this home saved. So we went through a pretty lengthy process of first going in front of the Civic Association to get some feedback from them, and then in front of the Board of Adjustments to get a variance approved to make our lots narrower in size to allow for the 3 new construction homes, and then to save this home. So we saved this home, we kind of conceded to this, and we saved this home to, out of respect to the William Bigney design, out of respect to the neighbors. We want to make a good presence here in Fort Lauderdale as we're establishing our reputation here in town. And we saved this home for it not to be like used against us, really. So we just don't find it that fair that it's being compared to as, we build these other homes. Also, to speak to just how the new construction home, the 311, compares to the setback, this home is pretty much in, really along the water. The edge of the water is basically runs through the home. So our 311 meets the front yard setback requirement. This home does have a larger front setback, but it also doesn't meet the code for a rear yard setback. So if this home was placed where a rear yard setback would be required today, it would be more in alignment with the new proposed home. Additionally, the garage, if that were to be more set back, we would not have the programming for the backyard that we feel desired here along the river. Another note just about, I want you to know that we talked to our architects about all the concerns that were brought up at the last meeting. We were asked to reevaluate some, different materials, which is why we switched from the hardy to the brick. We thought that would look really nice, a very, a nice white painted brick. We also asked them to reevaluate the garages to see if we could set those back more, reset them back more. So we took all these different notes that we heard you, what I'm trying to say. I'm not an architect, although sometimes I pretend to be. And so they had a lot more language that they could, probably something that would sound really good. But ultimately, I think that, we could design them where the front door is flush to the entrance of the garage, but it wouldn't provide a very welcoming, inviting front entrance. So it's really about where does the entrance begin, that kind of perspective. And, we want a nice an enclosed porch. We want a nice safe entrance. And so that's why the garage is a little bit more forward. But really the first thing that you're greeted with is the columns. And so we did use different texture and elements to create the focal point to be the door and not the garage. So in this presentation, I started with 281 just because I was playing, up in numbers, but 311. So here we are with the front elevation. So again, we use, lighting and texture to bring your attention to the front door. The upstairs is recessed, just to bring into consideration for the home next door. We really don't have the width to have a side loaded garage, which is also common with some of the other single family homes that you saw in the immediate neighborhood, with those front facing garages when you're on a smaller, or narrower lot. That's how the design works in this scenario.
So can we wrap this up a little bit?
Yep, and then here's just the back of the yard as well. And really taking into consideration, you can see how far the existing home is set back here in the rear. I thought this was a good image to showcase. It doesn't have the vegetation that we are planning to plant there to screen properly, just because we wanted to show the image. But I think the architects did a good job of playing into what's already there and how to build this new construction home that would be desired. So that's my presentation. Well, this slide I wasn't really planning to present, but I know that some, about celebrating the landscaping was brought up, and this is the properties along 14th Way. So if you can kind of follow my squares and where my lines are, just showing what, the trees, the environment that is being taken down currently. So just, I know that the landscaping is celebrated and we want to play into that, but this is currently what's, surrounding us. And so just a bit confusing.
I think what we're celebrating what could be there.
Yeah,
In South
yeah,
Florida, not what is there.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And if there's questions, just
I'm
stay
here.
there.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify, the presentation is on, that you just gave is on 311 Southwest 14th Way, also 291 Southwest 14th Way and 281 Southwest 14th Way. That was what you gave the presentation on, right?
Mhm.
But the board will vote on it separately, so I just wanted to clarify.
I would just ask that whichever one of the three we're voting on, can you project the front elevation?
Yep, I didn't show any front elevations of 281 or 291. I
Well-
only showed front oh, I did, you're right.
You
On that
just-
one
just-
screen.
I was
Yeah,
getting
Side by
confused.
side, yep,
So this is the one.
Yep.
Right now, okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Let's leave that. Go ahead, please.
Open it to the public.
Go ahead. This is the public. Yes,
I live in a.
please introduce.
Maggie Hunt, 1307 Southwest Fourth Court, Silver Bend, and I live in the PUD.
Maggie, can you just clarify which item you're speaking on? Is it
This
all,
one, right,
is it 311 Southwest 14th Way?
311, it would probably apply a lot of this to all of them, but.
If you want to do all, I can say, we just have to clarify for the, do you want all of them? Or just?
I guess all maybe,
Okay,
then I
so-
won't have to get up again.
Oh, okay, and also for 291 Southwest 14th Way and 281 Southwest 14th Way, so this comment is on all.
So I live in the PUD, and just to give a little different perspective on what's around the house, just drove by on the way back, and you really can't see our PUD from, especially the northernmost one, but from the southernmost one, maybe a little slice. What's directly across the street is a preserve that looks like a jungle. And really, the side where these houses will be built look like that too. And the picture that she showed looks to me like the lot where the adjoining property owner tore a lot of trees down, I believe, was fined heavily, tore a lot of things out that he shouldn't have been. And there's an oak tree on one of these properties. It's huge. It's like 2.5 feet wide at least, and it's right on the edge of the road in the property. And then there's two more. I have pictures, but I don't think I'm allowed to show them. And there's a lot of palms and things that are, it's pretty heavily wooded, most of the lot. Right next to Margie's property, it's a little more open with grass, and there's 2 canopy trees there. So I know that we have a tree ordinance, and I'm just curious, I mean, because it's an important part of our neighborhood and the history part of it also, I'm just wondering, is the applicant planning on cutting all these down? Because I don't kind of see them in the renderings, and I know there's a fine. Are they gonna pay the fine? I'm also curious about the side yards. Are they to the required widths? They seem very close to the lot lines, and it seems very big on the property. And I also just am concerned about the fact that there's a few items where it says criteria is not met. I mean, I feel at least like where it says partially met, you know, like, oh, well, they tried, you know, but where it's not met at all, it's like, I mean, I just hate to encourage too much from it.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak on this project? If not, we'll close the public hearing and open it up to board comment. Why don't we start with Tim this time?
Obviously, this lady asked about the trees. I'm just curious, what is the answer to the trees? Trish, do you know that, or is
As
this?
part of permitting, they'll have to have a landscape review. So
So it would be required or not required? It'll be a hoop that they have to jump through it eventually.
yeah, that'll be left to our landscape reviewers. It's not part of the historic preservation code, so we don't typically review the trees.
Okay. That's it for now. I'm interested to hear what the experts have to say on the architecture.
Okay, Ashley?
I'm kind of remembering some of the conversation that we had last month, and I remember a couple of the points of intention was the materials used. I know there was a big discussion on that. And I think in the past, while I don't recall I don't recall us ever approving brick. We have approved hardy
No.
board, and
Okay.
we
Tricia
have,
would be there.
No,
we've never approved brick.
not
But-
that I recall. no.
Right, I don't ever even remember anybody bringing that, but we have approved hardy board in a few
Yes, we have.
instances. And I think that's important just to note, because I think we try to always talk about being consistent, and the same with the 4-foot fence. I think we've pretty much unilaterally, every time that's come before us, we've kind of agreed that that's where it's going. I don't see anything in here, and maybe I'm misremembering, regarding there was an issue with the back balcony not being consistent or something last time. Do you remember what I'm thinking of?
I think it was on another one of the applications, and I think it was just the fact that we don't have these balconies consistently throughout the historic district.
But this one has a balcony, doesn't it? Doesn't this one have a, yeah.
Yeah.
But the point at the meeting was that that's historically not been a part of any kind of historic structures in the area.
Right, we don't typically have them, so our review is based on compatibility with the structures that are surrounding and like the neighborhood as a whole.
Yeah.
So when we do our staff reports, we're taking into consideration those elements, and we're calling them out in the staff report. And the board has to determine
Right,
that.
but I guess in the staff report, I don't see any discussion of that.
That we were talking about the furthest north property.
Okay, so not
And
this,
that
good. Okay,
specific
I'm sorry, okay. And then the last thing that, I think that kind of sticks out to me is just, there isn't much of a yard in the backyard. I mean, while they have a pool, there's not a lot of space back there, and so I know there was a little bit of question in here about the setback with the front yard versus the backyard, but I just don't know on a lot the size that exists there, how you can rectify that, because, you have to be, it didn't seem like they had an excessive backyard, so.
Let's ask Tricia, what do they have and what do they?
Yeah,
if they were to get
they're
something?
required to have a 25-foot setback. They have a 26 feet, 6.5 inches on the rear. And on
Okay.
the front, they need a 25-foot setback. They have 26 feet, 9.5 inches.
Okay,
And on the sides, it's 5 feet on each side. And that's what they're required to have.
okay, so that meets all the criteria
Yeah,
there.
and that's
Okay,
outlined on the second page of the staff report at the bottom.
okay, all right, that's all I have right now.
Right. Shane?
Yeah, I was also sympathetic to their point on the setback, with respect to the other homes. So it looked like the one on 333, based on the map, is a little bit closer, and then 215 a little bit closer too, and then we'll see what happens with the rest of these lots that are coming up for approval. So I was sympathetic on that, and it, based on what we just heard, it sounds like this house is dead center in the lot. Also agree with the point on the 4-foot fence. On the brick, it sounded to me like the applicant switched to brick to sort of appease us. But maybe you can clarify that. Was the move to brick just because to try and be more consistent with the?
Yeah,
Sure.
we were just trying to be more consistent, respond to the texture that was brought up in the last meeting. And just to differentiate ourselves, so we're open. We actually like both looks, like the brick or the hardy board. We are open and, to going back to the hardy that we had, but if that brick would maybe be more to your liking, and so that's why we switched.
Okay, yeah, that's all I have.
That's it. Alan?
Yeah, I struggle a little bit with this one. From the staff report, and I guess what I would expect to be designed in this neighborhood. From both what's around it. And just the opportunity that you have to create something that is fitting. So a lot of the staff report where we're not meeting visually compatible, those types of areas are concerning to me. So I'm not favorably inclined, but I want to hear everybody else's thoughts.
What is it about the visual incompatibility that you see?
So, it's glass, it's fence. Also, I think just what else is going on in the neighborhood, the other houses, and granted, I heard that they had the opportunity to, we gave them the right to tear the one down. So that isn't a fair comparison, but I would still be keeping more thematically in line with that.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I think that, like comments for everybody, we're struggling with trying to find reason to approve it, but I see way too many does not meet the criteria or partially meets criteria. That I have a lot of concerns with this applicant. I mean, particularly this one with the glass doors, and there's no muttons or mullions, and maximizing the property with what is available for anybody in the city of Fort Lauderdale, not particularly to Sailboat Bend historic nature, particularly because this neighborhood has so much that with the preserve and the neighboring properties that is landscape. And so it's not sympathetic to the neighborhood at all. I'm sure the PUD's 2 blocks or 3 blocks or whatever away, but this is really cloistered off of that based on the preserve is in between everything. So you really don't have any view, any kind of impression with the PUD there or the police station. I do kind of see the PUD and the police station kind of being approved in this neighborhood when they really were outliers. And I don't want to keep going back and having 2 wrongs don't make a right. So I don't want to approve this based on that, because I don't think that those were necessarily appropriate for this neighborhood. Now, the brick thing, there are other properties in the neighborhood that do have brick accents. They're not 100% brick, but there's brick accents throughout the neighborhood. So I don't really have a problem with that. those are the majority of the things that, again, we've talked about the hardy board. We've kind of allowed that to be okay. But I don't know if they've changed that completely, so. But those, the major problem is like the structure is too big for the property. They're maximizing the house for the lot. Doing just the required setbacks, but not considering any.
Thank you.
Do we have a clarification in the application of the total square feet under air? You know,
We can look.
maybe the applicant knows. Do you know how many square feet this house is? 11?
Not off the top of my head, I think it's somewhere around maybe 4,000, but I can look the detail up.
Sure.
But
Just a curious point. So, do you know? Yeah, come on.
One comment is this is on a 50-foot wide lot.
Right.
So, you know, maximizing, I understand where you're coming from and maximizing, but, and we aren't totally maximizing, you know, to the exact setbacks, but, it is a 50-foot wide lot, so it's smaller than, you know, maybe
Yeah.
what we would have had at a 75-foot lot.
Sure. No, the reason I ask is I find that the house isn't all that alarmingly big. I find it actually one of the nicer designs I could recall to date on a new construction build, and I think it's always difficult to find how to make new construction, which is almost inevitably going to be 2 stories, how to make that work on a street that has older residences that are single story. It's never going to align based on what the code interpretation reads. And I think what we're going to find is that if we don't have a way to have some leeway, you're going to deter new construction. No one's going to break ground to build a 1,600 square foot home, period. You may think it's going to happen, but it's not. And the reason why, you don't see it being built. Are they built? Sure. Are they built with any frequency? They're not. So I don't have an issue with the side setbacks because pretty much everyone goes to that side setback. That's why we have a zoning table. So I think for us to get set on the idea of zoning, where zoning is doing its job and it's met zoning per ULDR, I think that's a reach. And I think Tricia did a great job of highlighting why it doesn't fit within the context. And I think the applicant did a great job disputing why it does. But I don't think our job is to play zoning. I think our job is to see if it meets zoning. To push this house back any further than 26 feet it is, would essentially eliminate a backyard. Who would eliminate a backyard of a house that's on the river? Not very many people would. I mean, you really wouldn't. You wouldn't push the house all the way back. There are some older houses on Bryan that are way set back. And I don't know why that was the case. There probably is some historical reason why that took place. But I think anyone building a home today would look at the setbacks and say, how do I conform to them? This conforms to them. If we went down the line on elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, every single one, I believe to the best of my recollection, we've approved. The garage door stands out to me as something that I don't think we've seen yet, and the brick. But to Richard's point, and I know 3 properties on West Las Olas alone, which just for proximity to the last application, they have brick accents. So I don't know when those got approved, how they got approved, if they were just accepted, but there are contributing structures that do have brick. So I don't take issue with the application. I just don't see why we're picking it apart. If there's other properties that serve as examples of the same kind of building and materials that have been used while being kind of mindful of 2 main things here. If we're using materials, hardy board, for example, that literally mimics the wood plank siding, but we're telling people you can't do it because it's not wood plank siding. With the cost of construction doing what it's doing, I think it's just almost impossible to ask them to use an inferior material. It's becoming, and I think there needs to be a codified amendment to how that changes, because it's not fair to Tricia to keep evaluating it and telling us it's not right, because she's absolutely right in telling us it's not permitted, and we're sitting here fighting it. There's just too much of a friction there. And that goes the same for, I've never even heard of this composite shape roofing, but if it's the same, it looks like a shingle. Like, I don't think anyone's naked eye is going to tell you that's not a shingle. So to tell someone you can't use that, even though the useful life of that is about 40 years, totally stabbing at a guess there, and the regular shingles half that, that's difficult. The cost of construction's gotten crazy. I think where we can give deference to people, where the aesthetic is met by the intention of the code, I think we need to kind of give some deference and give them some idea of discretion. The one thing I'm the first time seeing it, I don't ever recall seeing was this garage door. Other than the garage door, I'm completely fine with everything else on this application.
And
Thank you.
I have that, yeah, thank you so much. I have the detail that you're looking for, so it looks like our total under air is just a little over 3,200 square feet.
Okay,
And just an FYI, so the building occupies 37% of the site and the code allows a maximum of 45% of the site, so.
That's a
Thank you.
responsible ratio by any
yeah,
measure.
it is.
It really is.
And I think that
Okay.
the roof is just a clay tile, just flat
Yeah,
clay tile,
it's cited as a composite shape,
Okay.
so I
Yeah,
don't
but
know what
is that
that
the
is.
same as clay tile?
yeah.
Like a cement
They
tile.
said they're
No,
different.
Oh, it's different, okay.
Yeah, they're not the same.
Total square footage of the lot then?
Excuse me?
Seven.
What's the square, 7,000 square
Yeah.
feet plus
Yeah.
the lot?
And
Okay,
then it's
I-
3246 is the exact.
Yeah, under air. So I have a number of comments here. One of the comments that comes back to me from the last time when we discussed this, somebody brought up the fact that they look a little too suburban. And I thought that was a very good comment, but you know, when you add a new house in a historic district, I wouldn't want the modern house to mimic the historic features in the district. I think the new house should stand on its own, as I believe these do. Because they do incorporate the covered entranceway and, you know, some difference in roofing, which helps. I would have liked to seen the house pushed back a little bit, maybe not all the way, but maybe 10 feet, 12 feet. Because when you get these three houses in the neighborhood, it's going to form a new normal for the neighborhood. And that's gonna be a wall with everything else in back. So maybe there's a way to vary the front yards a little bit to give some more rhythm. And that would be involving taking a partial rear setback variance. That's just an idea to look at. I share Richard's frustration on the design guidelines, and I know, Tricia, it's not your it's one's responsibility, but we seem to, at every meeting, talk about the heights of railings. We talk about the windows. How can we get, is it the commission that has to make these changes? Because we've been doing this for years.
Yeah, we did have a draft changes ready a couple of years ago, and then the Civic Association asked to review it, so we reviewed it with them, but it was put on hold because we had other things that we were tasked with. So the board also tasked us with doing the thematic district ordinance, so that further set back our ability to work
Which we'd
on
like to
other
bring
things.
back again.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just a balance of workload sometimes and,
Well, I think it's time to, at least some of these items that keep coming back to us, like the hardy board, like the heights of the railings, and I'm sure there's a half a dozen others if we really talked about it. How do we get that request limitedly rather than making something that involves the whole world?
yeah, I think it's a little, I mean, we have the drafts.
Right, exactly, you're halfway there.
But we do need to revisit it and probably work with the community to ensure that, you know, they're aware of the changes and get any
Sure.
feedback from them. And then potentially bring it back, but
Is that a commission ruling though that would make the amendment codified?
usually what we do is we bring it to the Historic Preservation Board when it
Yeah.
involves historic preservation and get your feedback as well.
Right,
And then we have to go to the Planning and Zoning Board for a recommendation
Yeah.
from them as well as the local planning commission. And then ultimately it goes to the city commission for 2 readings.
yes.
So can we bring this back? Can we put it on the agenda for next time, or how do we do this, or you have to revise what you have?
I mean, I don't know if we need
Yeah,
commission direction.
Well, can I just suggest that we handle her case?
Sure.
without-
Oh, I know, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's great. Just to finish my comments, I think they should be able to use the hardy board. Being from Philadelphia, I don't like seeing brick anywhere in South Florida. I've seen enough of it in my life. So I don't think brick is reflective of a native material. I like the fact that they're trying to create that horizontal look that was in the original home on there, the Bill Dignity home. And I'm fine with the hardy board. I think that would be fine, because we have approved that before. The windows, I don't have a problem with the windows because it is a more contemporary home. And the windows do look more contemporary, so it goes with the home. The side setbacks, I agree with Richard, I mean, anybody who's gonna build here is gonna take a 5-foot setback, it's pretty typical. Maybe it could be landscaped somehow or made to look more attractive and just to dress it up a little bit. And. Okay, yeah, right. Yes, that is about it. Oh, one last question. What are your plans for the beginning home that's still standing there? Will be restored, rebuilt?
Sure.
Take the application.
Oh,
Don't mind.
you
because
want to
that-
stay? Okay. Let's stay. All right, sorry.
So just think, oh,
No, okay. Please, because I have to get the record correct, whether approve or deny, believe me, we don't want that.
so just looking at the staff report and hearing the comments, just so on the summary conclusion, there are basically 5 elements that they outline that either partially meet or do not meet. The brick and fiber cement hardy board is one, which we have discussed and we've approved in the past. The composite shake roofing shingles is not something that we've approved, although I agree with Richard's comment that visually looks the same as a shingle. The fencing at the 4-foot is something we have approved numerous times. And the horizontal slider windows, like we literally just approved that 5 minutes ago. And then the last is the garage door, which I think multiple people have. That's probably the biggest thing that I have with this design is the garage door, because it does look so different and out of ordinary, but so when you look at the 5 pieces, we're really down to 2 pieces here. It's, and if I'm reading the report right, it's the composite shake roofing shingles and the garage door, because those other 3 items are items that we have regularly, we have a core approved.
This is new construction, so the horizontal sliders. The other one was the existing property, so trying to get it to match and to work for that property was different than a new construction.
But the functional alternative in circumstances, in this case, is a French door. It's really the only function that, or the only way to get an opening to work on an exterior door. And I think to keep telling people you have to use French doors, to my knowledge, we've interchanged and gone and allowed for horizontal sliders in this case, indoors. I think, I don't wanna absolutely
On
say
the
that.
river, yeah.
On the river, we have. That's what becomes so difficult, because if there was an appeal to this, there's a pretty easy way to point to why it would be appealed, it's invasive. So, and then the door, but the preference for sure. And I'm looking at the code, this is the material and design guidelines code. The configuration of a door, being a garage door, says 2 things. Garage has to be 9 feet max width, I get that, and it has to be, I think that's all it says. And then the windows of the garage subsection. Tricia, do you know if that means the window of a garage door, or does that mean windows separate?
No, it's just meaning windows
Okay.
separately, but we do have, we have our design guidelines.
Yeah,
That are more visual and
yeah.
picture oriented that we also review as well, so.
So, but
taking
this,
a look at
but this is,
compatibility.
but this is all it says about garage doors.
So typically in the material and design guidelines for
Okay.
Silva Ben.
Right,
There are additional criteria and design guidelines that we review as well.
so we're already kind of part ways in allowing discretion here is, we literally just had someone stand up there. We literally just asked them to add more grid lines. That's literally what they're doing. And
Absolutely.
we're taking this like, here's the apples, now we have this bag, it almost looks like the same thing in a lot of ways. In the context of what the application of what these breaks are, and we're gonna say, that's what we prefer here or there, but not here. And this lacking consistency is troubling, just to me it is.
I agree.
I'll speak for myself, it's troubling to me. Because I think as an overall product, we've got to give the architect, Mr. Architect, you gotta give him some, well, some ability to think.
Just to add to that, I agree with you. I mean, it may not be something that's in the district now, but this is a new construction and it's new architecture. What I like as an architect about these doors is that they don't look like garage doors.
Right.
You don't see a blank wall there.
Right.
As you typically do. These feel very open and maybe they're even mirrored, I don't know, but you can't see in. And I think they really add a lot to the street and the home.
For a front facing door,
Yes,
I don't know how you get a nicer door.
absolutely not, I agree.
We're like asking them to revert back to a stock door, and I just don't know how that's gonna do that design.
All right, so we should, are there any other comments from board members?
I think it's refreshing, especially to hear Arthur take on something new in a historic area. I've been sitting next to him for years. And traditionally, he gets his teeth into an old bumper and doesn't want to let go of it. I'm extremely encouraged that the board is entertaining a practical approach to what can be done and not get stuck with what has to be done that's impossible. The party board is a perfect example of some of the things that stall things for us and we don't move forward. I respect everybody at this table's opinion and whether or not this design fits or doesn't fit. But we have to make a decision about moving forward and I have a great amount of respect for Arthur's architectural background and the points that he made about not making a new house try to look like an old house. That's so important to keep in mind when we're looking at things that are at first when we say this is too suburban. But if you look at some of the older buildings that were in her presentation from the Bigny architect, a lot of two of those houses had those straight horizontal lines in them. And I'm prone to go along with Ashley's 5-point here, and the only thing she had was the garage door, and then Arthur brought up the point that he liked it, and it opened it up.
So Tim, would you like to make a motion?
Well,
My main
So,
concern is
just
enhancing for that
I-
area.
and
I do have to point out a discrepancy. It's not composite clay tile, it's just clay tile.
This is composite.
On this,
Shingle on this shingle?
So the rendering shows, it doesn't really show it very well, because it looks
What
more
is
like
the application plan?
clay tile.
And clay tile
Yeah.
could be.
I think at one
acceptable.
point they had composite, but
And that's part of the code, that's acceptable?
yeah, the clay tile.
so clay tile isn't an issue then.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so last comment is when you talked about trying to find some space in the backyard, I mean, I don't know what happens with that when you're on the water. If you start to encroach the river, can you even get that much closer to the river with your foundation, with your building, if you want to pull? You know what I mean? There's got to be a certain amount of distance you have to be away from the water line in order to accomplish what they have in that backyard. So I don't know if there is an inch for them to work with, so. I will stick my neck out and make a motion to approve this. Where is my writing for reading? Board action? Is this it?
yeah,
I will make the motion. Oh, this whole big.
no, this is these are
Yes.
the
Well, Jerry will help you.
for consideration.
Motion to approve this
Okay.
resolution
Yes.
for a certificate at appropriateness for a new construction under case number UDP HP 24006 located at 311 Southwest 14th Way, based on the following findings of fact, which are above on this page 1 through 5. Is that sufficient?
No, it would be based on the discussion and
You
Yeah.
gotta decide
Well,
which ones
it's
you're
up
taking
to
off
you
or
all.
adjusting.
You may want to state that it meets all of the applicable criteria in accordance with the testimony that you've received. Or you can choose something else, but the staff report is different from saying it meets the criteria, so that's just a suggestion. Can I just real quick, Patricia, just for clarification, you're amending page 6 of the staff reports under 3 in the table to state that the roof material is.
Clay.
Okay, great, okay, just making sure.
So
Sorry, can
we
Tim
would-
cite it based on the fact that other prior applications have been approved, like to cite the White Hardy board, we have to just say on testimony?
No, we have to apply each application based on the
Based on
facts we
testimony.
receive. You can't use other applications.
So
That's why I was trying to stir the conversation
Gotcha.
with other things.
The testimony.
So based on the testimony we heard today,
Based on the testimony we heard today, we're approving 1 through 5.
why,
So I would say that it meets all the applicable criteria stated in the staff report. And if you would like to adopt the conditions that are in the staff report, then you can
Like
state
the
that.
fencing or the
But-
garage door or any of the things that are on her list right there.
no.
You ever talk about the fencing? There's 5 things right there. So you can pick and choose and you
That's
find
not
what you're.
page
You're
eight.
really looking at
motion.
4 and 5.
Oh, my goodness.
You're gonna check.
You can
Yes.
take your time,
Okay.
Tim.
I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction under case number UDP HB 24006 located at 311 Southwest 14th Street or 14th Way based on the testimony heard today and is subject to the following conditions. The property is located in an archaeological significant zone. No archaeological deposits are anticipated within the subject property. However, if our archaeological materials or features are discovered, then work in the vicinity of the discovery shall stop and the city shall be notified immediately to coordinate the discovery. And the application is subject to the approval of building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
And meets all criteria. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said that it meets the criterion based on the testimony today.
That's what I was gonna say.
The second is, maybe second.
I'll second that.
Just to clarify,
Yeah,
the conditions 1, 2, and 3 are not a part of the motion.
Correct. I'm not doing
Right.
1, 2, and 3, the fence, the garage door, the hardy board, but I am including the archaeological significant zone language and the building zoning and ULDR requirements.
Okay.
Can I ask a question before we vote on this? So is the application with brick or hardy board?
It has both in it right now.
Okay.
Well, as presented, the main wall facade is brick, and then there's details with hardy board.
Well, what do
Do
we,
we want
what do we
Can
want?
we,
Yeah.
Well,
is there a
she's
way we
not
can
putting
make a
in-
motion to allow the hardy board on the front too? Because
She's
I-
eliminating that, so she has an option to use it.
Yeah, I'm saying their application as proposed.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because last month they had a hardy board in the
Yeah.
front and they changed it because of our comments.
Right.
So if we approve this motion, does that give them the flexibility to use hardy board in the front?
No,
No,
you're
they're-
approving it as presented with the brick.
So I have a problem with the motion then, because I really don't think brick is appropriate for South Florida.
And you voted.
Guess we can vote.
I know.
Okay, I just
You've got
wanted
a
to.
motion and a second, so now we've got to vote.
So we have a motion
We have a
and we
second.
have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
43.
43, so the motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, we have to go down
We'll count it off.
and who voted who? Go, please.
No.
Mr. Jones,
No,
Mr. Rosa,
Yes.
Mr. Shabon,
Yes.
Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
and
No.
that's only 2 votes.
Okay,
So,
Yes.
congratulations. So are you going to make a presentation for the second one?
I do have, just the renderings up for the second one, the present.
Well, let's
For
have,
some reason, my controller isn't working well,
Okay.
so I don't know. what to
let's have
find out.
Tricia or Simone.
We have the disclosures on this item too.
Are there any disclosures?
Site visit.
Yeah.
Okay. None.
If you
Okay.
could verbally state none, if you have none.
None.
And
None.
None.
We go the next to our slides or,
Oh, yeah, let's go to the next
or,
house.
you know what, just go put yours up.
Yeah,
We're doing 291.
there it is.
All right, so
Okay,
this is the project UDP HP 24005 and located at 291 Southwest 14th Way. So, this is the property just to the north of that one-story beginning home. It stands at 34 feet, 7¼ inches. It's using standing seam metal on its tips roofs. The garage is more prominent on this particular building as being stepped forward. But it does have more traditional detailing with the outriggers and the casement windows on the front facade. The setbacks are being used similarly to the other properties where they are maximizing the setbacks, but they are within the allowable setbacks on the property. Party board is isolated in this particular instance to just the fascia. And they're using horizontal sliders on the rear. So I'm gonna go through some of the criteria that they don't meet. And one of them, as you know, is the ULDR section 472411 D3CI, where the effect of the proposed work on the landmark or the property upon which such work is to be done. They are maximizing the heights and the setbacks. They will have to raise their interior floor to the 7.4 based on the new flood maps. Section under B, the relationship between such work and other structures on the landmark site and other properties in this historic district. The cement fiber is not something that, like we said, it is normally found, but it is isolated at the fascia in this particular one. But traditional materials are also being used in this particular design. So it partially meets the criterion. Under ULDR section 472411 D3CII, the garage is being pushed forward. The relationship between solids and voids in the front facade shall be visually compatible with other buildings and the place which is visually related. So you see where it's highlighted by that first floor shed roof. So it brings a focus to the garage. If you push
Your
forward,
concern is-
I'm sorry?
I didn't understand the concern.
It's that where its relationship with the other properties, this is again bringing the garage forward and focus is being brought to it more so with the shed roof over.
So
So
you
it's
would propose
enhancing.
to push the garage back and the.
Something to
entrance forward.
minimize that impact.
Okay.
That's fine. And so it does not meet that criterion. And the relationship between the building to open space between it and adjoining buildings shall be visually compatible to buildings and places to which it is visually related. So it is to the north of that beginning home, similar to the previous application. The beginning home is set back further from the street. And this is pushed forward towards the street, but it is within the setback. Okay, so it does not meet that criterion. Like we said, the hardy board, horizontal sliders on the rear. And it does have where it hooks the porch on the second floor to the rear as well. So zoning did look at this. And review the documents submitted and the follow corrections must be incorporated into the plans prior to the submittal for building permit. For the proposed FEMA maps, which are currently being used, the finished interior floor needs to be at 7.4 feet NAVD. An adjustment will need to be made to comply with that requirement. Number two, dimensions for the required setback at 3 feet for the fence along the front of the property line needs to be provided, as well as the required landscaping in that location. Number three, dimensions for the setback for the swimming pool and pool equipment from the property line and the waterway need to be provided. Additionally, The following needs to be addressed at time of permitting, which is screening of the pool equipment, design of the fencing along the north and south property lines, design of the gates and the side property lines, clarifying note regarding a self-closing gates. Staff finds, in accordance with the ULDR, finds the application for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction under case number UDP HB 24005, located at 291 Southwest 14th Way, partially meets the criteria as section 472411D3CI of the ULDR and partially meets the criteria outlined in sections 472411DC3II of the ULDR and partially meets the criteria as outlined in sections 4717. Elements that partially meet are the hardy board, proposed fencing, which is at 4 feet instead of 3, and the horizontal slider windows and the sliding doors in the rear.
Okay, thank you.
You want me to read the conditions?
Sure.
If, however, the board must make a motion of approval with conditions or a motion for denial. If, however, the board adopts a motion for approval with conditions, the following conditions for the certificate of appropriateness for new construction are provided for consideration by the HPB. The fencing located within the front yard, building setback along the side property lines must match the material and height approved for the front property line. Fiber cement hardy board is not an approved material, and a substitute that complies with the sailboat bend design guidelines must be chosen for the use of the fascia. This property is located in an archaeological significant zone. No archaeological deposits are anticipated within the subject property. However, if archaeological materials or features are discovered, then work in the vicinity of the discovery shall stop, and the city shall be notified immediately to coordinate the discovery. If unmarked human remains are encountered, then excavation in the vicinity of the find shall halt immediately, and the archaeologists shall alert the city's historic preservation staff to coordinate the discovery and take measures to implement chapter 87.2.05 Florida statute as it pertains to discovery of unmarked human remains. This application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
Thank you. I have a quick question for the city attorney. Why, for every single application, do we force Simone or Trish to read the entire paragraph about archaeological remains and some of the other things that are so common? Can't we just say that we approve the points in here? I mean, I don't know how to do that legally, but it seems like a waste of time to keep repeating these things.
You don't have, they don't have to read everything verbatim. That's just a choice. It's just presenting you with the evidence that you
Right.
need to consider. So it's a matter of style. Some people read, some people don't. So it's really to aid the folks that haven't read it. But if you all have read it, it's okay to say, I've
Well,
already read it.
we're hearing it on every project tonight. So, yeah,
I don't
you know.
assume anything.
I just- I know,
Yeah,
I
you
just-
assume.
I was just
don't-
trying to see how we
assume.
can speed up the meeting. Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to, I don't know who reads and who doesn't, but it's really to just let
Okay.
you know what evidence you need to
Understood.
consider to highlight it, because notice she doesn't read the entire 10 pages.
No,
she
I
just
know
highlights
that,
certain
yes,
things,
yes,
so she just,
okay.
you know.
Would you like to say something? Just, I have to limit you to
Just-
3 minutes.
Just briefly, yes.
You don't want to limit her in
No,
10 minutes.
Not her.
No?
Just,
She's the applicant.
Dean and the applicant.
Keep it short.
You don't have to keep it, you don't have to keep it short.
Thank you. The rest of the presentation, I'm not gonna go back through all of the context photos, but ultimately, we wanted to speak to the context of the architectural styles that have developed over time and taking cues from the vernacular design of the area, but updating it for, our modern person who would be living in this home today. And these homes are built, for somebody who's gonna be working in the community. They're not built to be like vacation homes, where they come and go. So they need to have garages, a front door, those types of things. So the proposed design here at 291 is characterized as transitional with coastal and classical elements, which I think you can feel just by looking at this rendering. It aims to blend the modern features while respecting its historic and architectural significance. The covered entrance porch not only enhances the welcoming atmosphere, but also aligns with the property's historical context. And then the incorporation of large windows, especially in the upper level, introduces a sense of lightness and transparency, which is also contributing to the architectural style and design. I really don't have anything else to say on this one. I think the rendering really speaks for itself.
And I think we were pretty complete on the first one.
What's that?
We were pretty complete on the first. half.
Yeah, and then here's the back of the house as well, just so you see the rendering. It says metal roof and
Great.
again, we're meeting the setbacks. And taking up, not the full, we're not maxing out the property.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? If not, we'll go to board comment.
Is this one, 4,000 square feet? It looks like, just out of curiosity.
4202 is under air. what
Yeah.
It says in the.
This is 281, 291.
291.
I think this one. If you had to design the house in the historic preservation board, had to comment on it. It looks like a layup. And they did everything, I think, and then some. We want everything we took an issue with.
Before.
This house doesn't have, right? And it stands on its own, let's be clear about that, but the way the glass is shown, the way the front elevation reads, to me aesthetically, I hear the repeated idea that the massing is different. I guess just to put that into context, when the home to the south was approved as new construction, I don't remember, was that a two-story home? I assume it was, I don't wanna.
So 1 story.
It was? Yeah, which one? It was,
It's like 5 blocks south
okay,
or 5 parcels south.
that's
And it's
interesting.
also in that landscape preserve kind of area.
Yeah.
With a single story.
Well, if this is gonna set the tone of the block, certainly will meet the context then. It's beautiful. Okay, I really like it.
Thank you. Richard.
Well, out of the three, I think this is the most appropriate. It does have a little bit more of a bigger setbacks than the other one. And I may have concern with the massing, but being as we just approved the other one, it falls in the context of what moving forward with the block makes sense. So but the design of this is better in my opinion.
Alan?
I agree, the design is better. I have the same reservation that I had on the last one.
James?
Yeah, I agree with Richard Rosa. I think it's a beautiful house. And I like the presentation. So.
Okay. That's it.
No other comments from. Other than what's already been said. I like the design. I think that they were thoughtful and. Trying to incorporate some elements, but still being different, and so.
I'm in agreement with Ashley on this.
That was easy. I have a few different comments here. As we talked about fences before, I have no problem with the fence height because we've approved that so many times. The same thing with the hardy board. I think we just approved it on the other house. I think it'd be fine here. And as we noted, it's something that we need to look at changing the code so we don't confront this issue every time. As a little architectural lesson in terms of the garage doors, I mean, these are conventional doors and they look very appropriate to the house, I would agree. But I like the ones with the windows or something with the window, because to me, it just opens up the whole thing and doesn't make it look like a wall. I think if garage doors are allowed in the district, they're going to be seen. I think of the movie Dumbo with Jimmy Durante many years ago, and he's walking with this giant elephant in back of him, and he looks around to the elephant and says, "Now look inconspicuous." Well, it's the same thing with the garage door. It's never going to look inconspicuous, but you make it look as good as it can.
But once upon a time in New York and other cities, they provided a side yard to drive to the back of the property. And so nobody does that in their designs these days.
Because the land is too expensive.
Our lots are too narrow.
Pardon?
The lots in these cases are narrow.
Yeah, but, yeah. And the last thing is, I like how they're changing the roof material on this one. Is this metal roofing? So I like the way you're doing different detailing on the houses that are next to one another. So they won't look like a cookie cutter. One question is, you describe the main entrance as recessed, but it doesn't look recessed on the rendering. It looks flush with nothing above it, which you'll need to do anyway. You need to provide some covering
Right.
when they open the door.
There's some, yeah, it's a covered entrance.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're seeing the steps go up and part of the door gets cut
Maybe
off, actually getting
the
higher.
renderer didn't put enough shadow in.
I'll let them know.
Okay, other than that, I think it looks good. So with that, unless anybody has any more comments, we'll entertain them.
I'll make a motion on this one. I'll motion to approve the resolution for certificate of appropriateness for new construction under case number UDP HP 24005. Located at 291 Southwest 14th Way, based on the testimony heard here today. Subject to the following conditions. I'm just gonna cite them by number, if that's okay, to take one off of Arthur here. Based on the condition number 3, and based and including condition number 4.
So just for clarification, you find that it meets all the criteria mentioned in the staff report?
Did we do that on the last one, just for clarification?
Yes.
Yes, yes,
And so you're including conditions 3 and 4, but not 1 and 2.
correct.
Which one is it that you're not including?
The same ones that we're not, I'm not
Okay.
gonna speak to.
Already
I'm not
four.
including 1 and 2,
Got it.
including 3 and 4.
I'll second it.
Okay. We should probably do a roll call vote, make it easier for you. Okay. Richard, you can call the roll.
Mr. Bray,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
No,
Mr. President,
Yes.
Mr. Savon,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Ms. Walker,
Yes.
and Chair Marks.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So our next project is EVP 24004 281 Southwest 14th Way. Simone.
So this property is the most northern of the vacant lots. And,
Can we do the disclosure?
oh, sorry.
Disclosures, anybody?
nothing to disclose.
Site
No.
visit.
None. Okay,
Okay, so this is the most northern of the vacant lots. It's adjacent, like the property to the north of this property is another beginning home. It has, the beginning home that there has a 1-story and a 2-story structure on it, just for your frame of reference. So this particular one is a 2-story home as well. It stands 34 feet, 6 7/8 inches at its peak. And it has standing seam. That's not the right image.
Yeah.
No, the one, yeah, that one, right there. So like the other homes, it has party board on the property. In this design, the party board is located, if you look at your drawings, number 3, the lap siding, number 4, the trim work, number 8, the fascia, and number 9, the eaves. So it does have the most use of party board in it. It does also have traditional materials, wood, iron, and stucco. What it does also, it introduced a different thing in this particular one, which is foam brackets, which is your number 17 on your drawings,
what are
which
phone
is
brackets?
stucco on foam,
For what?
foam for the brackets.
When- Oh, for the, which bracket? Can we
In the
point it
rear.
out?
I don't know if you can see it in the rear drawing.
Oh, you're
In the rear
You don't
drawing.
have
oh, in the rear drawing.
You got the brackets here.
Oh, I see at the top of the columns.
It's foam,
You got
Okay.
bracket here
okay?
on the side.
Sorry to interrupt you there.
So I'm just, that's okay. So I'm just gonna go through briefly the ones that doesn't meet criteria,
Right,
which is ULDR section 472411 D3CI. Letter B, which is the use of party board again. So that partially meets the criteria because they are also using traditional, more traditional materials. D, where the garage is pushed forward more in this particular one than the other two. And there is decorative wood screening, I guess you call it, detail that brings attention
You're talking
again.
about the horizontal.
The
screening
horizontal
that's
screening.
Above the garage door.
Correct. And that brings a more attention again to those garage doors. So it partially meets that criterion under letter D. Under 472411 D3 CII about solids and voids. It is maximizing its setbacks similar to the other properties. And so letter E, which is the relationship between the building and the open space between it and adjoining buildings, where it shall be visually compatible to the buildings in the places where it's visually related, that it does not meet that criteria. And so the next one is about, which is letter F, party board again, with the materials and textures and colors of the facade of the building shall be visually compatible with predominant materials in the area. So it partially meets that criterion. And so it does have sliding glass doors in the rear. Which again, the rear is looked at as a front. And so that is also part of that of our design guidelines where it does not meet that criterion for those. Zoning did look at these drawings and the following corrections must be incorporated into the plans prior to submittal for building permit. Number one, for the proposed FEMA maps, the finished floor interior needs to be at 7.4 feet. NABD, an adjustment will need to be made. Number two, the dimensions to the required 3-foot setback of the wall and fence along the front property line needs to be provided, as well as the required landscape in the area. Number three, dimensions for the setback of the swimming pool and pool equipment on the property line at the waterway needs to be provided. They also need to provide visual screening of the pool equipment, design of the fencing along the north and south property lines, and design the gate at the side property line. In accordance with the ULDR, staff finds that the application for a certificate of permanence for new construction under case number UDP HP 24004 located at 281 Southwest 14th Way partially meets the criterion as section 472411 D3 CI of the ULDR partially meets the criterion as outlined in sections 472411 D3 CII of the ULDR and partially meets the criterion as outlined in sections 4717. So I'm just going to jump to the, if the board must make a motion for approval, a motion for approval with conditions or a motion for denial. If however, the HPB adopts a motion for approval with conditions, the following conditions for the certificate of appropriateness for new construction are provided for consideration by the HPB. Fencing materials along the front yard building setback along the side property lines should match the materials and height approved for the front property line. Number two, fiber cement is not an approved material and a substitute that complies with the guidelines should be chosen for the E fascia, encasement of the columns, and some of the trim and brackets. The application of hardy board should be limited to the lap siding on the exterior walls. Number three, foam is not an approved material and substitute that complies with the sailboat bend design guidelines must be chosen for the brackets. Number four, the property is located in an archaeological significant zone. Out of respect for Arthur, I won't read the whole thing.
Thank you.
And number five, the application is subject to approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I just have a quick question on number 3, where foam is not an approved material.
Right.
What is approved? Wood?
Wood is approved.
That's the worst material they use in South Florida.
You can also, it can also be consistent with other materials that are being.
Can you cast? You can do
Not
pressure
saying
treated
what,
wood
but-
and seal it.
Yeah,
It's on the second floor, so.
okay.
Are these foam forms?
Well, let's go, let's first have, do you have any comments to present?
Yes, please. If Will, you wouldn't mind putting back up my presentation? Thank you. My. Okay, so here's 281. So this is the building that is most to the north of the other two that we presented tonight. Then immediately to the north is the neighboring property that we don't own, but no, I know, it was said that the garage doors are more forward, but really it's just that we recessed the north part of the home back more to be sensitive to the neighbor to the north, so. Really the focal point here is the front door, the columns are what greets you when you first enter into the home. This is, again, embraces a transitional style, paying homage to the historic, architectural and archaeological significance of the Sailboat Bend neighborhood. We incorporated elements such as a front porch entrance, covered rear porches, and a mix of gable and hip roofs. The design seamlessly integrates with the architectural fabric of the neighborhood. The extensive use of materials like the stucco, which I think in our last meeting, for those of you that were here, this is the one that we started on and we had the most discussion about. We had changed the material to stucco on the bottom, so it's just the hardy lap siding on the top, on the second story. The foam, we were advised by the builder that that's the material that's being used. It's really a hard, I know the word foam, I think of what the foam, that you're used to seeing, but it's really a hard, yeah. And that's what he's been using and he's in the area, so we took lead from him. And yeah, I think that the building, it follows a traditional approach in material selection, but also introduces a little bit of a modern interpretation through a crisp composition. We think this will look really nice in the Sailboat Bend neighborhood, and we use texture and colors while adding that contemporary layer to the neighborhood's architectural aesthetic. And this also takes up, I think, 35 or 36% of the site coverage, so really wanted to limit that, also being sensitive to the neighbor to the north. And we carefully considered setbacks and massing.
Okay, thank you.
And then here's the back.
Okay, do we have any else from the public?
Question,
Yeah, but
the top row.
You
of
would
the
have to
garage,
stand here
you have
and
to
see.
stand up, but
Is that like a slatted, what is that?
what are you referring
The
to?
top row of the garage, is that like a slatted, I'm just curious.
Where are you pointing?
Above
the garage. Oh, above the horizontal line above the garage?
It just looks different that top row.
Okay,
I mean, I just would have curious what.
Sure.
Is that allowed? Like, can I answer a question that
sure.
Okay, Simone, maybe you have the detail, but I think it was just like is it Hardy?
The top,
I think she's talking about that like theme.
but that's wood.
The
Are
horizontal.
you talking on the upper garage door?
Yeah,
Above
that's
the
what-
garage doors.
What? Yeah, sorry, I thought you were
Okay.
talking about
Just-
the band.
No,
Well, it could be wood. Are you sure it's wood or is it a
It's-
wood composite so that doesn't deteriorate?
right,
It's called out, it's right here. It's a statement, it's a tribute. yeah.
okay. Maybe we should start with board comments. Tim,
What exactly is the part of the house that's using the phone? Is it that little arc that's on the second story?
no, it's the little capital on the column.
That's it?
No,
This
it's
stuff?
the brackets.
Well, the capital at the top of the column.
No, the brackets on.
What are you referring to as the bracket?
Tim, look, good number 17, you'll see it highlighted. Scabble to it.
The public comment was
Yes,
closed,
that's
right?
what I thought it was, that little arc.
This is.
It's this guy.
Public comment is closed,
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
sorry. If we start with.
Oh, I didn't say.
No, we started the board comment. I know.
Wait, Tim, can you show me what you just said?
Where's
It's
Where-
that little arc that's going from the column to the roof.
Oh.
Just that little accent.
Oh.
The accent.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I think they're
Okay.
prefabricated, like I think you can purchase those.
Yeah.
And attach them.
Right.
But they can be aluminum or any kind of material that gives that look. It's just depends, choosing what you feel most.
Yeah,
And they're not structural.
They're just using a material that's common
Yeah.
to the sailboat bend.
I will say the concern is that even if
Okay.
it's got stucco on the foam, that birds can still, like woodpeckers can still peck away at it, so.
So
he
you
does,
prefer to have wood?
so I'm not gonna decide for them what they wanna
I know.
do, but it's just be
Okay.
aware that that's a
All right,
concern.
let's
Consider.
finish.
All right, so now that that's cleared up, that I don't have a problem with it. I think it's another example of a very nice proposal to build something new in an area that's old and have it work.
Okay, thank you.
And just to comment on the garage doors, I just want a little note in my narrative, I think that they're just to tie the garage doors in so that they're not like appearing as garage doors necessarily, kind of similar to like the glass on the, so something that just gives it a little bit more detail,
Okay,
to kind of, yeah, hide it as a garage door.
thank you. Ashley?
Yeah, I generally don't have an issue with this particular one and think they've done a nice job trying to keep an aesthetic, but keep it different. All three of them have been a little different, which I think is good. I don't have really any other
Okay,
comment.
thanks. Jane?
Yeah, nothing else to add.
No.
I love the Ford Maverick truck. It's advertised in the front.
You didn't like the Porsche and the other one? No.
I didn't notice.
I
the
know.
Ford.
Okay, thanks. Richard?
But you mentioned before about the porch in the back on this one. What was that again? That was a concern that we should discuss, or
You have that,
you said it was on this one that,
yeah, it was this one, the discussion was taking place.
It was about the solid and voids where most porches are on the first floor. And they are,
so the lower floor has that open area, that
Right.
the terrace
so
that
second
you're
floor
concerned about.
balconies and porches are not typically found in Sailboat Bend.
And this is
And that's what
another issue that we need to really talk about with.
Especially with on board and living outdoors.
Because I think it runs totally counter to the way people want to live today. Anyway.
So for me, I think the little decorative elements on the front facade with the garages, it's a nice little change for, giving it some more character with horizontal, doesn't really bother me that much. And it was with the massing, we've already approved 1, 2, so
Right.
again, you're keeping the floor consistent moving forward, so that is kind of mute at this point.
Thank you.
This, like, flipping back and forth these, I almost feel this house, for some reason, the rear elevation looks like a different house to me than the front elevation. I don't know if it's the way that they shadow casted, kind of like it almost looks blue. And then not to get into color, but it just looks, I prefer the rear elevation than I do the front elevation. The one thing on the massing that I would veer, this by far has the most kind of like massing issue that I see is if we go back to the front elevation really quickly, there's no break in the wall here, like the roof line kind of pulls off a little bit on the front. I was a bigger fan of the other two, but I can't find anything here that I'm super kind of objecting to. Would have been nice maybe to see that the way that little roof feature, that little, I guess you could call that an eave to some degree on that window.
Yeah.
Yeah, that awning, if that would have come over some section of the garage, maybe that would have been nice, just to break it up,
Or maybe over the entrance.
or over the
It would be
entrance.
more appropriate.
Yeah.
But now we're designing. things.
But I don't wanna get into. Just giving
Ideas.
just honest comments, you know?
Okay.
If we had a podium, this would be the bronze, so,
Yeah.
it's a
So,
nice house.
I do point out, like on the backside, the shutter is different and the windows there
Right.
versus the front, which is a little strange,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
again.
Well, I want to follow up on those comments because the one thing I see, I like the house. But I have one really pet peeve about it is that the beautiful horizontal railings on the fronts complement the house as they do the other houses. I really like the horizontal wood treatment above the garage because it minimizes the garage a little bit, just like the windows do. My one big pet peeve is why is there vertical railings here? And there's little bits of vertical railings on the front. It seems to detract from the total architectural picture you're trying to create. I mean, that looks totally out of place to me, to be honest.
In the front, there's more wood, in the back, there's less.
No,
wood,
there's
so it
less,
kind of-
wood. There's less wood in the front. Let's go to the front.
Well,
of
the
the
shutters and the
Well, the
garage
shutters,
doors and
but you see what
the front door, I
the
mean.
front entrance. That's like the major point, and that should really echo the beautiful horizontal pieces you have. I won't say anything more about design.
I'm
I
sure,
can't help it.
I'm sure my architect has had like a very brilliant response. But
Well, for your
Yeah.
building's consistency.
thank
So
you.
with that, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction under case number UDP HP 24004 located at 281 Southwest 14th Way based on the testimony we heard today and is subject to the following conditions. I'd like it subject to number 4 and number 5,
Meets all the applicable criteria
and
mentioned.
it meets all the applicable criteria mentioned.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Seconded by Richard. Do a roll call.
Mr. Bragg,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
No.
Mr. Ross,
Yes.
Mr. Shalom,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
and Chairman.
Yes. So 6-1, so the motion carries. Congratulations. Good
Thank
luck.
you. Thank you all very much.
I lost my agenda, Tricia. Do we have anything else?
No.
on here? That's it?
Can I do for a bit of the
Communications and.
Yeah, the thing of the city. I'll stand up there.
now?
Yeah.
Maggie Hunt. So then. I'm here from the Master Planning Committee for the Sailboat and Civic Association. And we've been working on a master plan for some time and wanted to ask if we could make a presentation at your next meeting to let you know where we are in the process and to get your feedback. And we're pretty far along, so 45 seconds here, just a quick synopsis. Our master planning committee has had several meetings with the city staff and our commissioner. We've given them our presentation. They responded very positively, and Chris Cooper thought he would have funds in his budget for our initial vision plan that would be done by a consulting company. But just lately, a couple of his projects that neared completion, he could see that he wouldn't have those funds. So tomorrow we will be asking for funds to hire a consulting firm for a vision plan from the city commission. It's a short presentation. It's really kind of general. It just involves, what scope we're looking at, and but we're kind of excited to hear some ideas from you guys because when I come to the meetings, I hear some great input, and so that would be great. So now I don't know about giving communications to the city commission. I mean, for tomorrow, that might be too late. Is that? I don't know, but if you all would be in favor of a consulting firm doing a vision plan for Sailboat Bend, we would welcome that communication to the city commission.
I have one question.
And the
On that.
Broward, let me just say my license. The Broward Trust for Historic Preservation is supporting this.
Great.
So what was your question?
My question is to Tricia. Has this been presented to Tricia and Simone at the city so that they can comment on it?
Yeah. I've,
And what are your comments?
All right, this is a follow-up question, because we presented already or had a motion in November of last year, presented in January. So where does that stand in the process with the commissioners or funding?
Yeah, so the Historic Preservation Board did make a communication to the city commission, kind of related to this request. The Sailboat Bend Civic Association has formed their committee to somewhat formalize it. They have met with Chris Cooper and Al Battle, the deputy director, and myself, as well as the commissioner. To talk about what they're looking to do. Overall, I think we're supportive of it, but of course, it does take some funding to execute.
Can we just get a better idea before we meet about it? I'm all for putting it on the agenda for next month, but what, it's a vision plan, is that a master plan equivalent? Is that what?
So what they're looking to do is something similar to what we did in Himmershey, which is to obtain public comment and public feedback on what they'd like to see for the Sailboat Bend Historic District. So in the case of Himmershey, we did several outreach meetings, one-on-one meetings. We did an open house event.
Yeah.
And to formulate that into kind of a list of priorities that could be further developed moving forward.
With the idea of enacting some element of change or addition to the guidelines, or just generally like the consensus of the community is as follows, and then how does it implement, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. and Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
could answer what the.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
please.
So, this would be like the precursor to, have the feasibility of a large master plan thing, where you have, like you did for the Los Olas Street. I mean, I guess, I know, Richards, had some great ideas, like, for some adaptive reuse on the street, possibly, but, we want to do it with community input and have professionals come in to get all the stakeholders' feedback, to be inclusive of everybody that's a stakeholder. And so that's why we wanted to hire a consulting firm. So this is like to say, is it feasible to do this larger project? Because that's a lot bigger ask money wise. And like we would, if you're not comfortable doing that communication, I know it's short notice. We kind of had short notice that we needed to come to this meeting, so, and present tomorrow. But we do have our presentation. It's short. If you guys want to see it next month, we can have somebody, it's got the little slideshow.
So follow-up questions to that. You're saying the Sailboat Bend Civic Association has done this through the vision thing. Have you gotten support from the greater Civic Association? Or is this just a committee that has formulated everything is ready to present?
We've said, we've not got any negative feedback when we talked about, getting money for a consulting firm.
So there's not been a vote.
Well, we haven't probably had quite a quorum. We did at the last meeting, but it was so long, I forgot what we were talking.
And have you invited other stakeholders to have that discussion about what your vision plan is, meaning like the fire station or the river walk?
No,
or
the vision plan has got nothing specific in it. It's just to look at, for the consulting firm to look at infrastructure and, really broad topics, not to get specific about anything at all. That's the consulting firm's job to do with exactly what you said, to get the stakeholders together and have the discussion. So we find out what everybody's input is.
So the vision plan is the very beginning of the process.
Right, to get
Okay.
everybody's
And then you
input.
obviously have to get it funded and buy-in from.
Right, and I think they're kind of looking at $50,000 maybe for this little vision, and a big plan is more, but yeah, we don't want to, no, we put forward nothing specific at all.
So the $50,000 was allocated just to go to a consulting firm to.
Just to get a basic vision feasibility plan. Is it worth it to spend more money
Yeah.
to look at any changes? What
Okay.
changes feasibly could be done in the neighborhood? Is it worth it to get a bigger
I'd
plan?
like to
To
get.
be clear, we don't have any.
Trish's
funding
comment.
allocated.
Well, our request was to bridge the historic Himmershey Village with the Sailboat Bend History District. And they're from representing the entire Sailboat Bend area, which is both of them, and the entertainment area in between. So it's a bigger project or discussion than it is just for the historic district.
So my question to Tricia is, are we ready for this? I mean, does there need to be any other reviews?
Well, it's up to us if we want to listen to the
Yeah.
presentation.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, they're just requesting to be put on the agenda
Okay.
next month so that they can give you a little bit more information about what they've been discussing and what they envision for the next steps.
Okay.
Put them on the agenda.
Yeah.
Do we have to vote on this?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, motion to add them to the agenda.
Thank you. Second. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. They'll be on the agenda for next month.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Adios.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley, for your help.